The vast blackness of space stretched endlessly around the small Terran mining ship. It floated at the edge of the asteroid belt like a lonely bird in a dark sea, its lights faint and weak against the stars. Inside, the corridors were quiet, the hum of the engines, the only sound breaking the silence. To the hunters from Vreelock, it looked like a perfect target. Their ship was sleek and painted in deep shades of green and black, almost invisible against the void. Inside, 6 alien hunters stood around a table looking at a hologram of the human vessel. The leader, a tall figure with glowing yellow eyes and scaled skin, smiled. "This will be easy," he hissed, his long claws tapping the table. "One human, alone. They are soft creatures. Weak. This one will not even run." The others laughed, their fangs glinting in the dim light. They had hunted dozens of species over the years, many of them stronger and smarter than humans, and none had lasted more than an hour. To them, humans were nothing but prey, slow, fragile prey. Their ship approached silently, docking to the mining vessel without making a sound. The leader motioned to his team, and they grabbed their rifles. Weapons that glowed faintly with deadly energy. "Bring me his head," the leader said, his voice cold.
"Oh."
"Let's see if the legends of humans are true, or if they're just stories to frighten children." The airlock opened with a hiss, and the hunters stepped onto the human ship. It was quiet, too quiet. The corridors stretched before them, narrow and dark. Small lights flickered on the walls, and the air was heavy and still. Their boots made soft metallic thuds as they moved forward. One of the hunters laughed softly. "Doesn't even know we're here. This is boring." But the leader didn't laugh. He looked around carefully. Something felt wrong. They spread out, scanning each hallway with their weapons. The mining ship was small. Only 2 levels and a few rooms. It should have taken them 5 minutes to find the human yet. They didn't see anyone. A faint noise came from ahead. A metallic clang, like something falling. The leader raised his hand, signaling silence. They moved toward the sound, their weapons ready. At the end of the corridor, they found an open door. Inside was the control room. It's empty except for the faint blue glow of monitors showing asteroid scans. "Still no human. He's hiding," one hunter muttered. The leader walked in slowly, his sharp eyes scanning every corner. He spoke softly. "Come. Out, human. Make it quick. We don't like to waste time." No answer. Suddenly, a faint movement caught his eye. A shadow slipped between 2 corridors outside the room. "Over there," shouted one of the hunters, rushing after it. The others followed, boots pounding against the metal floor. They turned the corner, froze. The corridor was empty again. The shadow was gone. One hunter cursed and banged the wall with his claw. Where did he go? But before anyone could answer, the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the corridor. The hunters stood very still, their eyes adjusting to the faint red emergency lights that blinked on. Then a scream. They spun around. Of them was gone. His weapon lay on the floor where he had stood. But the hunter himself had vanished into the shadows. What just happened? One whispered. The leader snarled. "Stay together. Don't let him pick you off." They huddled close, weapons raised, scanning every dark corner. A faint sound came from above, a soft scraping, like metal against metal. They all looked up. Nothing. Another scream. This time they saw it. A shape darting from the ceiling, grabbing a hunter and pulling him into a vent before he could fire. Blood splattered the wall. The remaining 4 stared in shock. He's hunting us," one of them whispered. The leader growled. "Impossible. It's just one human." But deep inside, he wasn't so sure anymore. They started moving again. Slowly now, covering each other, their rifles shaking slightly in their hands. The corridors seemed to grow longer, darker. The red lights flickered, casting strange shadows that danced on the walls. Every sound made them jump. A door slammed shut behind them, making one hunter fire his weapon wildly down the hall. Another hissed at him, "Stop wasting shots." Suddenly, another door ahead of them locked with a loud click, then the one to their left, then the one to their right. The corridor was now sealed, leaving them with only one way to go forward. But forward was even darker and colder. The leader tightened his grip on his weapon and took the first step. They walked slowly, their boots echoing louder than before. The air felt heavier now, almost choking. Then something small rolled across the floor toward them. They stopped and looked down. It was a helmet, one of their own, scratched and dented, smeared with blood. One hunter reached down to pick it up, and a pair of hands shot out from the darkness. Pulling him away before anyone could react, they fired wildly, filling the corridor with energy bolts, but hit nothing. When the smoke cleared, only 3 of them remained. Their breathing was fast and loud now, their claws trembling. Where? Is he? One stammered. The leader's voice was low and angry, but his eyes betrayed fear. He's playing with us, he said. Knows the ship. We don't. Stay sharp. But deep inside, he was beginning to understand. This was no prey. This was a predator. The 3 of them pressed their backs together, moving as one, scanning every angle. A faint whisper came from the shadows ahead, then another from behind. They spun around, weapons raised, nothing. The whisper came again, this time above them, then below, then from everywhere at once. It wasn't words, just soft sounds, meant to confuse them, to break them. It was working. One hunter shouted, "I can't take this anymore," and ran down the corridor. The leader tried to stop him. It was too late. A few steps later, the runner screamed, and then silence. Only 2 remained now, the leader and one other. They pressed forward. Step by step, their weapons shaking in. Their hands at every corner, as they expected him to strike. Every shadow looked like his shape. Every sound made them jump. And then, the lights flickered again and died completely. Total darkness. The leader growled, baring his fangs. Enough of this, Terran. A faint chuckle answered him, coming from everywhere and nowhere. The leader fired into the dark, his rifle sending blue light flashing down the hall. For a second, he thought he saw a figure at the end, tall, calm, standing perfectly still. Then it was gone. He turned to his last hunter, but the hunter was gone too. The leader was alone now. His claws tightened around his weapon, his chest rising and falling quickly. Silence pressed in on him from all sides. Then, a soft voice, calm and cold, spoke from the dark. "You came here to hunt," it said. The leader spun around, trying to find the source. "But you didn't ask if I wanted to play." The leader snarled, "You're just a human. You can't." Before he could finish, something struck him hard from behind. Sending him crashing to the floor, his weapon clattered away into the dark. He scrambled to his feet, his breath ragged. Claws raised, but no one was there. A faint whisper came from the shadows. "Run, hunter." The leader froze. He wanted to run, but his legs wouldn't move. He stood there in the dark, shaking, realizing finally what he was up against. This was no easy prey. This was a Terran, and he was fighting back. The leader of the hunters stood frozen, his claws shaking as he tried to see through the darkness. His heart pounded in his chest like a drum. The faint voice of the human still echoed in his ears. "Run, hunter," but he could not run. His pride kept him rooted in place. Though his instincts screamed at him to flee, he took a slow step forward. Then another, his eyes darting from shadow to shadow. The silence was heavier now. The air felt colder. He reached down and grabbed his weapon from the floor. Its glowing barrel comforted him a little, but not much. He whispered to himself, trying to believe his own words. He's just one human. Just one, weak, fragile, but another part of his mind. The part that had hunted on dozens of worlds knew that wasn't true anymore. Behind him, something moved. He spun around and fired. Blue light flashed, scorching the metal wall. But the corridor was empty. A faint laugh came from somewhere above. He raised his weapon higher, backing slowly down the hallway. Then, without warning, the floor below him shook. A sudden blast of air roared through the corridor, throwing him off balance. He fell hard, sliding across the floor. His weapon flew from his hand again. He scrambled to his feet and looked around wildly. A shadow moved at the edge of his vision fast.
Silent.
He reached for his communicator and barked into it. Squad leader to command. The human is, but there was no response, just static. The human had jammed. There comes, the leader cursed under his breath and kept moving. Then he saw something that made his blood run cold. Ahead, in the faint red light, stood one of his hunters, or what was left of him. The alien's body hung from the ceiling. Tied by thick cables, his weapon broken in two at his feet. On the wall beside him, written in what looked like oil or blood were 3 words, "You are next." The leader stumbled back, his claws scraping against the wall. He turned and ran down another corridor. For the first time in his long career, he was not the hunter, he was the hunted. Every step echoed louder than the last. His breath came faster. He could feel eyes watching him from the dark, though he couldn't see them. He passed through another door and slammed it shut behind him, locking it. He leaned against the wall, trying to catch his breath. But then, lights flickered. He looked up in the corner of the room. Shadow moved. It was him, the human. He stood there, tall and calm, with a metal pipe in his hand. His face was dirty and bloodied, but his eyes were sharp, cold, unafraid. The leader raised his claws, ready to fight. "You think you can stop me?" he growled. The human said nothing. He just tilted his head slightly and smiled. That smile was worse than any weapon. It was the smile of someone who already knew how this would end. The leader lunged forward, slashing his claws. But the human moved like water, dodging to the side and striking with the pipe. The metal hit the alien's arm with a sickening crack. Making him roar in pain, he swung again. But the human ducked and shoved him hard against the wall. The leader clawed at him, catching his shoulder, but the human didn't stop. He slammed his elbow into the alien's chest, knocking the wind out of him. The leader fell to the floor, gasping. The human stood over him, pipe still in hand. But instead of finishing him, he leaned down and whispered, "You're not hunting me. I'm hunting you." Then he vanished into the shadows again, leaving the leader alone. The alien lay there for a moment, stunned. Then he forced himself up. Clutching his injured arm, he stumbled out of the room, looking for a way to escape. He needed to get back to his ship. To warn the others, the corridors twisted and turned. All of them looking the same now. It felt like the ship itself was against him. Doors locked before he could pass. Lights flickered and died as he approached. Strange sounds, footsteps, whispers. Banyang came from every direction. At one point, he saw movement ahead and fired wildly. When the smoke cleared, he realized he had shot one of his own hunters. What remained of him? The body crumpled to the ground silently. The leader's breath came in short gasps. His mind began to crack. He ran now, no longer caring about pride or victory. He turned corner after corner, the human always just out of sight, always waiting. Once he caught a glimpse of him through a broken door, a flash of his face, calm and deadly. Another time he saw his shadow dart across the ceiling. Every time he thought he was close to escaping, another door would seal, another light would go out. It was like the human controlled the ship itself. Finally, he stumbled into a large room near the engine core. It was dark, but at least it was open. He looked around, panting, clutching his injured arm. No sign of the human. For a moment, he allowed himself to believe he had escaped. He moved to the far wall, trying to open the emergency hatch. That's when he heard it. A faint sound behind him, like footsteps. Slow, deliberate. He turned around. There he was. The human stood in the center of the room. His pipe gone now, holding nothing at all. Yet, he looked more dangerous than ever. The leader backed up, pressing himself against the wall. You can't kill me," he stammered. The human tilted his head again. "Why not?" he asked softly. I'm the leader. They'll come for me." The human stepped closer. "They already came," he said. The leader realized what he meant. His ship, his hunters, his whole crew, gone, one by one. And now, It was just him. The human stopped a few feet away, his eyes hard and unblinking. The leader raised his claws one last time, though they trembled now. The human didn't flinch. He reached out, grabbed the alien's wrist, and twisted. There was a sharp crack, and the leader fell to his knees, gasping. In pain, the human leaned in close, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is my ship now," he said. The leader tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. Then the human stood, turned, and walked away, leaving him kneeling in the dark. The lights flickered one last time before going out completely. The leader could still hear the sound of the human's footsteps echoing through the corridor as he disappeared into the shadows once more. For the first time in his life, the leader truly understood what fear was, and for the first time he knew what it felt like to be prey. The leader remained on his knees for a long time after the human disappeared. His breath came in short, sharp gasps. His claws scraped the cold metal floor, but his strength was fading fast. He felt small now, smaller than he had ever felt. In his life, somewhere in the ship, far away, a door creaked open. Then another, and another. The sounds echoed through the corridors like quiet footsteps, coming closer and closer. He forced himself to stand. His broken arm hung limp at his side, and his legs shook beneath him. But he refused to die kneeling. He moved slowly to the hatch at the far end of the room. It opened with a low hiss. This one wasn't locked. Maybe, just maybe, he could reach the docking bay. His ship might still be there. He stumbled down the next corridor, his claws trailing against the wall for balance. The ship was even darker now, the faint red lights barely enough to see. Every few steps, he thought he heard a whisper behind him. Every time he stopped, the sound stopped too. He quickened his pace. The walls seemed closer now. The air felt even colder. He passed the bodies of his own hunters, all 6 of them now accounted for lying where the human had left them. Each of them had the same empty look in their eyes. The leader clenched his jaw and kept moving, refusing to look too closely at them. Then he reached the docking bay. His heart lifted. For just a second, there it was, the Vreelock hunter's ship. Still docked, its sleek black hull pressed against the human vessel. But the lights on the ship were dark, and the hatch was open. Wide open. He stopped at the edge of the docking bay, staring at it. Had the human already been aboard? Was it a trap? He didn't care anymore. He had to try. He rushed across the docking bay, his claws clicking against the flora. The open hatch loomed before him, and he ducked inside, slamming the controls to seal it behind him. The door shut with a satisfying clang, and the airlock hissed to life. Finally. He could leave this nightmare behind. He staggered down the narrow hallways of his own ship, moving toward the command deck. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. His claws scraped against the walls as he climbed to the bridge. When the door to the bridge slid open, he froze. The lights were still on here, faint green and blue, casting strange shadows. But the chairs were empty. The control panels flickered softly, but there was no one here. No crew. No hunters. He stepped onto the bridge, his eyes scanning every corner. Nothing moved. He stumbled to the captain's chair and collapsed into it, clutching the armrests. For the first time since stepping onto the human ship, he allowed himself to breathe. He was safe now. He'd escaped. He reached out to the controls and tried to activate the engines. Nothing happened. The display blinked. Engines offline. Manual override engaged. His claws dug into the chair. Override? Who? Then the screens all changed at once. The stars vanished. The green and blue lights faded, and a face appeared. The human's face. Calm. Dirty. Eyes cold as ice. The leader's breath caught in his throat. The human spoke. Only 2 words. You're home. Then the floor beneath him shook violently. The bridge lights exploded into sparks. The whole ship groaned as though it were alive. Smoke filled the air. The leader was thrown from the chair as the ship tilted. Violently to one side, he crawled to the nearest panel, trying desperately to regain control. but the human's face stayed on every screen, watching silently as the ship began to die. "No," the leader roared. "This is my ship." But he knew it wasn't anymore. Suddenly, every speaker on the ship crackled to life. "Out!" And the human's voice echoed everywhere. "You never asked if I wanted to play," he said. "You never asked if I wanted to fight back. You came to hunt me. Now, you get to see what it feels like." The leader looked up at the ceiling, his claws shaking. Then the human's voice dropped to a whisper. "Goodbye, Hunter." With a final deafening groan, the ship's engines exploded. The leader screamed as the bridge erupted into fire and smoke. He clawed his way toward the door, but the floor split beneath him. He fell hard, crashing into the lower deck. The pain shot through his body, his vision blurred. Somehow, he managed to crawl toward an escape pod. His claws left bloody streaks on the floor. He reached up and slammed his hand on the release panel. The pod door opened. He fell inside, hitting the cold floor with a loud thud. He lay there, gasping. As the pod sealed and shot away from the doomed ship, through the small window, he watched as the Vrilok Hunter ship tore itself apart, flames bursting from its hull. Behind it, the human's mining ship drifted silently, lights still dark, waiting. He stared at it until it was nothing but a speck among the stars. The pod drifted. Through space, silent and cold, he curled up on the floor shaking. His pride was gone. His hunters were gone. Everything was gone. And in the back of his mind, one thought repeated over and over. He's not prey. He's a predator. The galaxy needs to know. The galaxy needs to know. But even as he thought it, wondered if anyone would believe him. Who would believe that a single human alone, unarmed, could bring down an entire hunting party? Who would believe that a human could turn the hunters into prey? He closed his eyes and whispered to himself over and over, "He's not prey. He's not prey." But the sound of the human's cold, quiet laugh still echoed in his head. The escape pod floated silently through space. The leader of the hunters lay on the floor, his claws weakly gripping the cold metal. His chest rose and fell in shallow, shaky breaths. His body ached, but the pain was nothing compared to the fear. Still clawing at his mind, he kept his eyes shut, hoping that when he opened them, this nightmare would be over. But when he finally looked, the stars outside the small round window still shone cold and distant, and far behind him, the wreck of his ship still burned a faint glowing corpse drifting into the void. He sat up slowly, his broken arm pressed against his chest. He had survived. Barely now, all he wanted was to get as far from that human as possible. The pod's small console flickered to life. A calm, mechanical voice spoke. "Nearest habitable world, Vrilok Outpost 6. Estimated arrival? 7 hours. He leaned back and let out a weak laugh. 7 hours. He could wait that long. He would return to Vrilok space. He would warn them. He would tell the Council what humans really were. The galaxy would have to know. But as he sat in the dim light of the pod, something strange happened. The console lights flickered. The soft hum of the pod's engine stuttered for a moment. His smile faded. He stared at the controls. No, not now. He slammed a claw on the console. "Don't fail me now," he growled. But the console flickered again, and then the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the pod. For a long moment, nothing moved. No sound, no light. Then a faint red glow appeared on the panel, and a quiet voice filled the pod, still running. The hunter froze. That voice, that human voice, his head whipped toward the tiny window. But the stars outside were empty. Nothing but blackness. He stood, his claws scraping the wall behind him. "How?" he whispered. The voice chuckled. "You didn't think it was over, did you?" The pod lurched suddenly, throwing him against the wall. He scrambled back to the console, trying to regain control, but the controls were dead. The pod spun slowly in the void. And as it turned, the hunter caught sight of something outside the window. At first, it was just a shape in the dark. Then, the lights on it blinked faintly, revealing the outline of the human ship. It was following him, quiet, patient, relentless. "No," the hunter whispered. You can't still be here. The human's voice answered softly. Almost kindly, I told you. I'm hunting you now. The pod shook again as a metal arm, like a docking claw, extended from the human ship and gripped the pod. The hunter stumbled backward, his back hitting the far wall of the pod. He watched helplessly as the human ship began to reel him in, pulling him closer and closer. He screamed and pounded on the window. Stop! What do you want? The voice came one last time, calm and cold. To finish what you started? With a loud hiss, the escape pod's hatch burst open. The air inside roared out into the vacuum for a moment, then stopped as the human stepped inside. He was wearing a simple pressure suit now, but his eyes hadn't changed. Still calm, still sharp, still unafraid. The hunter backed away into the corner, his claws raised weakly. You can't kill me, he stammered. I surrender. Human stood there silently for a long time. Then he spoke. You came to my ship. You hunted my crew. You laughed when you thought I was weak. The hunter's breath came in short gasps. The human tilted his head slightly. Now, he said quietly, I laugh. Before the hunter could react, the human moved fast, silent. Deadly in 2 quick steps, he closed the distance and grabbed the hunter by the neck, slamming him against the wall. The hunter struggled, his claws flailing us. Light, the human leaned in close, his voice low but clear. You're not prey anymore, he whispered. You're just another trophy. Then everything went black. When the hunter opened his eyes again, he was lying on the floor of a small dark room. His claws were bound with thick metal cuffs. His legs were chained. And around him were dozens, no, hundreds of markings on the walls. Each mark was a name, names of other hunters, names of other species. All of them crossed out. He understood now. This wasn't the first time. This human had done this before. The door opened, and the human stepped inside. The hunter flinched as the human crouched down in front of him. You thought we were easy prey? The human said softly. But humans, we don't break. We don't run. We fight. He reached out and carved another name into the wall, the hunter's name. The hunter stared at the mark, his breathing shallow. You won't get away with this, he whispered. The human smiled faintly. I already have. Then he stood and walked out of the room, leaving the hunter alone in the dark. The door closed with a soft click, and silence returned. The hunter leaned his head back against the wall, staring at the mark. He thought of all the times he had laughed at his prey, all the times he thought himself unstoppable. Now he understood. Humans weren't weak. They weren't prey. They were predators, patient, clever, and cruel when they needed to be. And now, it was just another name on the wall. Far outside, the human ship drifted silently through the stars, carrying its newest trophy toward an unknown destination. No one spoke. No one dared to follow. And somewhere in the dark, another hunter whispered to himself, never hunt a human, but it was already too late for him to learn. The hunter sat alone in the small, dark room, staring at the wall. His name was there now, scratched into the cold metal among all the others. Each name represented someone who thought humans were easy prey. Each name ended the same way, in silence, in chains, in defeat. He couldn't stop staring at it, couldn't stop hearing the human's calm voice. You thought we were easy prey? The door to the room stayed shut for hours. Or maybe days. He couldn't tell anymore. Sometimes he thought he heard footsteps outside. Sometimes whispers, but no one came. No one spoke. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the door opened. Light spilled in. The hunter squinted and raised his claws, weakly, to shield his eyes. The human stood in the doorway. No weapons, no armor, just his calm face and those sharp, cold eyes. The human stepped inside, and the door closed behind him. For a long time they just stared at each other. Neither moved, neither spoke. Then the human crouched down in front of him. You're the last, he said quietly. The hunter's throat felt dry. He swallowed hard and forced himself to speak. You can kill me, he rasped. Not afraid anymore. The human studied him for a long moment. Then he shook his head. I'm not here to kill you, he said softly. Not yet. The hunter's claws twitched in his cuffs. Then what do you want? He asked his voice. Cracking, the human stood up and walked to the wall. He ran his fingers over the names there, stopping on the hunters. I want you to remember, the human said. I want you to tell them. The hunter blinked. Tell who? The galaxy, the human replied. The others who still think we're weak? Who still think we're prey? The human turned to face him again, his expression calm but serious. You tell them what happened here. You tell them what you saw. You tell them what humans really are. The hunter's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The human crouched in front of him again. Leaning close so their faces were only inches apart, you tell them, the human whispered, that when you hunt a human, you don't just face one of us. You face all of us. You face everything we've learned, everything we've survived, everything we've become. The hunter felt his stomach twist. Even now, chained, he couldn't look away from those eyes. The human stood, pressing a small button on the wall, the cuffs on the hunter's wrists, and legs unlocked with a click. The door behind him slid open. Go, the human said simply. The hunter stared at him in shock. You're letting me leave? The human nodded. Go run, and when they ask what happened, make sure they understand. For a long time, the hunter didn't move. His claws hovered just above the floor. Then, slowly he stood, his legs trembling under him. He backed toward the door, never turning his back on the human. The human stood perfectly still. Watching him go, as the hunter stepped out of the room, he looked back one last time. The human's voice followed him. We're not prey. The hunter stumbled through the corridors of the ship, which were quiet now. No lights except faint white strips on the floor. No sound except his own uneven breathing. The docking bay door stood open. And there it was, a small Vreelock shuttle, waiting for him. He climbed inside, his claws gripping the controls weakly. The engines roared to life, and he shot out into space, leaving the human ship behind. But even as it faded into the distance, he felt the weight of those eyes still on him. Hours later, he arrived at the Vreelock outpost. The docking crews rushed to his shuttle as soon as it landed. They froze when they saw his condition torn, bloodied, defeated. They helped him out and led him through the metal halls of the outpost to the council chamber. Inside, the High Council of Vreelock hunters sat in their black robes, eyes glowing. In the dim light, they stared at him in silence as he stumbled forward. The leader of the council finally spoke. You failed, he said coldly. The hunter fell to his knees, lowering his head. I didn't fail, he whispered. I survived. The council exchanged confused looks. What do you mean? One of them demanded. You led 6 of our best hunters. You faced 1 human. How could you come back like this? The hunter lifted his head slowly. They are not what we thought, he said, his voice shaking. They are not weak. They are not prey. The council leader's eyes narrowed. Explain. The hunter took a deep breath. Then he told them everything. He told them about the human ship, the way it turned into a trap. He told them about the shadows, the whispers, the traps, the fear. He told them about the names on the wall, scratched into the metal a wall of trophies. He told them about the human's eyes. When he finished, the chamber was silent. Finally, the council leader spoke. You expect us to believe, he said, slowly, that 1 human defeated you and your hunters. The hunter looked him in the eyes. Yes, he said simply. The council leader leaned back, his claws tapping the arm of his chair. This changes nothing, he said at last. The galaxy is vast. 1 human cannot stand against us all. The hunter shook his head. You don't understand, he said softly. It's not just 1 human. It's all of them. The chamber fell silent again, and in the silence, the hunter's final words seemed to echo. You hunt 1. Meanwhile, far away, the human stood at the window of his ship, staring out at the stars. He knew the hunter would tell them. He knew the message would spread, but he also knew it wouldn't stop them, not yet. He would be ready when they came again. Humans would always be ready, because they were not easy prey. They never had been, and somewhere deep in the dark, the human smiled. The hunter's words spread faster than anyone expected. At first, only whispers carried the story. A human alone had defeated 6 Verloc hunters. He had captured their leader. He had let him go, but not before leaving his name on a wall of trophies. Some laughed at the tale. Others shook their heads and said it was impossible. 1 human against 6 trained killers? But those who saw the hunter return bloodied, trembling, silent, knew it was no lie. The Verloc Council called an emergency assembly. For the first time in decades, they invited observers from other species. Representatives of the Jorathi, the Trell, and even the cold-blooded Kelri sat in the vast chamber, their eyes fixed on the lone hunter who stood before them. He spoke again. As he had spoken before, "They are not what we thought," he said, his voice quiet but clear. "They are not prey." Some scoffed. What? Some muttered. But others remembered stories. Old stories about humans who had fought impossible wars. Humans who refused to die quietly, and fear began to grow in the chamber. One of the Kelri leaned forward, her thin voice hissing through sharp teeth. "If they are not prey," she said slowly, "then what are they?" The hunter's eyes hardened. "Predators," he answered. "Patient, clever, relentless." The room fell silent, far away, on Earth. The message finally arrived. A quiet alert appeared on the screens of a hidden base deep below the Rocky Mountains. A technician in a dark uniform frowned at it. Then he stood and rushed down the hall, into a wide command center filled with glowing monitors and humming servers. At the center of the room stood a woman in a black suit. Her hair was gray at the edges, but her eyes were sharp and focused. The technician handed her the message. She read it once, then again. Then she smiled, just faintly, so she murmured. They finally noticed. Her second in command, a tall man with broad shoulders, stepped closer. "Orders, ma'am?" She set the message down and turned. "Toward the room. Wake the sleepers," she said calmly. "Send the signal. Tell every colony, every ship, every station. The hunt has begun." Technicians and officers moved quickly, their hands flying across keyboards. Deep underground, vast hangars lit up. Massive doors opened, revealing rows of dark, silent ships, ships older than any record. Ships that had been sleeping for centuries. One by one, their engines roared to life, filling the hangars with light and sound. High above Earth, satellites blinked and shifted, sending coded messages through the void and far beyond the solar system. In hidden colonies, carved into asteroids and moons, humans everywhere began to move. Soldiers donned black armor. Pilots ran toward waiting fighters. Old generals opened dusty war maps. In one forgotten station, at the edge of known space, a man looked up from his drink as a red light flashed on the wall. He stood slowly, cracked his knuckles, and whispered to himself, "It's about time." Back. In the Verloc Council chamber, arguments broke out. "They're just one species," one of the Trell shouted. "They can't fight the entire galaxy." "They've done it before," the hunter replied quietly. An older Jorathi ambassador hissed in frustration. "Do you expect us to cower before a few angry mammals?" The hunter turned his gaze on him. "No," he said. "I expect you to be hunted next." The ambassador flinched at his words. The council leader stood finally, slamming his claw on the table. "This is madness. Humans are nothing. We've conquered their kind before." The hunter shook his head slowly. "You didn't conquer us," he said. "You distracted us. You thought we forgot." But humans never forget. Somewhere deep inside, even the council leader felt a chill run down his spine. On Earth, a black-suited woman stood on a balcony overlooking one of the great underground hangars. Hundreds of soldiers marched below her. Rows of ships hummed softly, waiting. Screens along the walls flashed messages in bold white letters. Stand by for orders. Operation Iron Teeth. Her second-in-command joined her, his hands clasped behind his back. Do you think they'll really try again? He asked quietly. She smiled faintly. They always do, she said. They can't help themselves. He glanced at her, and when they do, she turned to look at him, her eyes cold and sharp. Then she said, we. Remind them who we are. Meanwhile, out in deep space, the hunter sat alone in his quarters. The council had dismissed him, but they had listened. He could see it in their faces. They were afraid now, but not enough. They still didn't understand. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the stars through his window. They'll come, he whispered to himself, and when they do, they'll wish they hadn't. In the dark reflection of the glass, he almost thought he saw the human's eyes staring back at him. Calm, patient, deadly. He looked away. But he couldn't shake the feeling that he was still being watched, still being hunted, on a small, forgotten moon at the edge of the galaxy. A single human ship touched down in silence. Its hatch opened. And the same human who had faced the hunters stepped out. His boots crunched against the gray dust. His eyes scanned the horizon. Ahead of him stood a vast bunker, stores half buried by centuries of sand. He walked slowly toward it, his steps steady and quiet. When he reached the doors, he placed his hand against the surface. It glowed faintly beneath his fingers, then it opened. Inside, rows upon rows of black-clad soldiers stood waiting in the dark, their helmets hiding their faces. The human stepped inside and spoke only 2 words. It's time. One by one, the soldiers' eyes lit up, cold and blue. As they turned toward him, the galaxy would soon remember what humans really were. Not prey. Never prey. Predators. The galaxy didn't believe at first. Even after the hunter's warning. Even after the whispers spread to every corner of the stars. Even after the Vrilok Council sent urgent messages to their allies, telling them not to provoke humans. They still didn't believe, because how could they? Humans were just one small species from a small blue world. They didn't have a grand empire. They didn't control hundreds of planets. The galaxy saw them as stubborn, but fragile, until the humans decided to show them. It began quietly. A Kelry fleet was sent to patrol near Sol, just to keep watch. Dozens of massive warships drifted close to the edge of the system, their weapons charged, their commanders confident. For a whole day, nothing happened. Then one by one, Kelry ships began to vanish, not explode. Not burn, just vanish. At first, the Kelry thought it was a malfunction. Then they received a single transmission. Go home. The last ship tried to turn and flee, but it too disappeared before it could escape. At the same time, deep in Jorothy, space, something even stranger happened. A mining station on a distant moon went silent. When the Jorothys sent soldiers to investigate, they found the station intact, but empty. No crew, no bodies, no signs of struggle. Only a single message painted across the main hall. You hunted us. Now we hunt you. The soldiers hurried back to their ships, only to find them disabled, their engines cut, their weapons useless. And waiting in the shadows of the stars, unseen but present, is the human fleet. Across the galaxy, stories like these spread like wildfire. Ships lost without a trace. Stations abandoned overnight. Entire fleets retreating in panic after encountering nothing. The galaxy's great powers called emergency meetings, trying to make sense of it. But no one had answers until the humans spoke. On the day humanity revealed itself, every star in the galaxy seemed to go dark for a moment. Every screen, every comm channel, every display flickered, and then lit up with a single image. The same human who had defeated the Sci-Fi hunters. He stood in shadow, his face calm, his eyes cold. When he spoke, his voice carried through every speaker in every corner of known space. We warned you. We told you we are not prey. We'll let you believe your lie for centuries, because it was easier than the truth. But you came to our home. You hunted our people, and you forced us to remember who we are. So now, the hunt begins." Message ended, but the silence that followed was louder than any weapon. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy saw what humans really were. Not just soldiers. Not just ships, but predators who moved like ghosts, striking fast, then vanishing. Predators who could turn your own weapons against you. Predators who never stopped coming. Entire fleets surrendered without firing a shot. Outposts were abandoned. At the first sign of a human ship, the Vrilok Council dissolved, its members fleeing into hiding, and everywhere the humans went, they left the same message behind, scratched into walls. Carved into metal, painted in bright defiant letters, "We are not prey." On Earth. The black-suited woman stood once again on the balcony above the hangars. Her second-in-command joined her, its face grim but calm. "It's over," he said quietly. She shook her head. "No," she replied. "It's just beginning. Now they know what we are. But soon, they'll forget again. They always do." He nodded slowly. "And when they forget," she smiled faintly, her eyes hard. Then she said, "We remind them." At the edge of the galaxy, the hunter, the one who had survived, sat in silence. He was no longer a leader, no longer feared. He was a shadow of who he had been. But he remembered every night he saw the human's eyes in his mind. He heard the human's voice. "We're not prey. We're predators." He knew now that the galaxy would never truly defeat them, and deep down he also knew no one should even try. Far away in the dark void between the stars, the human stood. Alone on the bridge of his ship, behind him, the wall of names had grown a long, silent list of those who had once hunted his kind. He stared out at the stars, his face calm, his eyes sharp, and somewhere out there, another fleet was already gathering. Another council was already plotting. Another empire was already forgetting. The human placed his hand on the cold glass and whispered to himself, "Let them come. We'll teach them again." And in the darkness, the stars seemed to shiver as though the galaxy itself remembered. For just a moment, what it had learned. Humans were not prey. They had never been, and they never would be. The galaxy was quiet now, too quiet. In the weeks and months after the humans struck, no one dared to challenge them. No fleets moved near Sol. No raiders prowled human colonies. No hunters chased them through the dark. But silence doesn't last. Forever it never does. In the center of the galaxy, the remnants of the great empires gathered in a secret place. It was a massive chamber of black stone and steel, lit only by faint red lights. Representatives of a dozen species sat at a long curved table. Some wore heavy robes, some wore armor. All of them carried fear in their eyes. At the head of the table stood the Vrilok hunter who had survived. He was older now, his scars still visible. His voice was low but clear as he spoke. "We all made the same mistake," he said. "We believed they were weak. We believed they were prey. We were wrong." Around the table, the others shifted uncomfortably. One Trell ambassador hissed, "We can't live in fear of them forever. There must be a way to defeat them." Hunter turned his gaze on the Trell, its claws tapping slowly on the table. "You didn't see what I saw," he replied quietly. "You didn't hear what I heard." The Kelry general leaned forward. "Then tell us," she said. "Tell us what?" "They are—" The hunter closed his eyes, remembering. "They are everything we're not," he said. "They are patient when we are reckless. They are united when we are divided. They are silent when we boast. And when they strike." He opened his eyes and stared at the others. "They don't stop." The room fell silent. Far from the council chamber, deep in the void, the human fleet drifted. Not at full strength. Not with flashing lights or roaring engines, but waiting. Watching. On the bridge of the lead ship, the same human, older now, but with the same cold eyes, stood with his hands behind his back. Before him stretched an ocean of stars. Behind him, the wall of names had grown even longer. Each name told a story. Each name was a warning. A young officer approached quietly. "Sir," she said softly, "our sensors have detected movement near the Orion arm. Unknown fleet at least 50. Ships. The human didn't flinch. "Send a message," he said. The officer hesitated. "What message, sir?" He finally turned his head, his calm eyes meeting hers. "The same one we always send," he said. "Let them know we're waiting." A distant world, the hunter who had once thought himself invincible, stood on a balcony. Staring at the stars, he had tried to warn them. He told them everything he'd seen, the darkness, traps, the names, the eyes. But they hadn't listened. They never listened. And now once again, fleets were gathering. Once again, the galaxy was forgetting. He lowered his head into his hands, whispering to himself. "They'll never learn," he murmured. A voice spoke behind him, quiet and calm. "No," it said. "They won't." The hunter froze. He knew that voice. Slowly he turned, and there, standing in the shadows of his own balcony, was the human, older now, but unmistakable. The same calm expression, same sharp eyes. The hunter's legs gave out, and he dropped to his knees. "You," he whispered. The human stepped closer, his footsteps soft on the stone floor. "You ran," the human said quietly. "You warned them that bought them time, but it wasn't enough." The hunter's voice cracked. "What do you want from me?" The human knelt in front of him, his eyes steady. "I want you to watch," he said. "I want you to see what happens next." He stood, turning back toward the stars. "When they come," he said softly, "I'll be waiting. Just like before, just like always." He glanced back at the hunter one last time. "And when it's done," the human added, his voice calm, "and cold, you can add their names to the wall." Then he disappeared into the shadows, leaving the hunter alone in the council chamber. Alarms blared suddenly. Holographic screens lit up with warnings. Words flashed in red. Human fleet detected. Estimated strength, unknown. Recommended action, retreat. One of the ambassadors stood in panic. "They're here already," another shouted. "This is impossible. We're not even ready." The Vreelock hunter remained seated, his claws resting on the table. "They're always ready," he said quietly. "We never are." The chamber shook slightly as distant explosions rocked the ground beneath them. Through the wide windows, they saw it. Dark human ships dropping silently from the sky, their engines like faint whispers of light, no warning, no speeches. Just predators coming to claim their hunt. On the bridge of the lead human ship, the human commander stood in silence. Below them, the galaxy's most powerful council crumbled in fire and fear. The officer next to him spoke softly. "Do we stop?" "Here, sir." He shook his head slowly. "No," he replied. "We stop when they remember. And when they remember, we stop just long enough for them to forget again." He raised a hand and the fleet moved forward, quiet and relentless. On the balcony, the hunter, no longer a leader, no longer proud, watched the sky burn. He could already see their names being carved into the wall, one by one, and in the back of his mind. He heard the human's voice again, calm and cold. "We're not prey. We never were, and we never will be." In the quiet after the battle, when the human ships drifted silently back into the dark, the stars sparkled as they always had. But now the galaxy understood. Humans weren't weak.
Ow.
Weren't fragile. They weren't prey. They were the predators lurking in the shadows. The hunters that even hunters feared. And as long as the stars shone, they would always be waiting. Somewhere in the dark. A human voice whispered to the void, "Let them come. We'll teach them again and again and again."